God wrote, "I love you." He wrote it in the sky and on the earth and under the sea. He wrote his message everywhere. Because God created everything in his world to reflect him like a mirror, to show us what he is like, to help us know him, to make our hearts sing. And God put it into words too, and wrote it in a book called the Bible. Now, some people think the Bible is a book of rules, telling you what you should and shouldn't do. The Bible certainly does have some rules in it. They show you how life works best. But the Bible isn't mainly about rules, you and what you should be doing. It's about God and what he has done. Other people think the Bible is a book of heroes, showing you people you should copy. The Bible does have some rules in it, but most of the people heroes in it, but most of the people in the Bible aren't heroes at all. They make some big mistakes. They get afraid and run away. At times, they're downright mean. No, the Bible isn't a book of rules or a book of heroes. The Bible is, most of all, a story. It's an adventure story about a young hero who comes from a far country to win back his lost treasure. It's a love story about a brave prince who leaves his palace, his throne, everything, to rescue the one he loves. It's the most wonderful of fairy tales that has come true in real life. You see, the best thing about this story is it's true. There are lots of stories in the Bible, but all the stories are telling one big story. The story of how God loves his children and comes to rescue them. It takes the whole Bible to tell this story. At the center of the story, there is a baby. Every story in the Bible whispers his name. He is like the missing piece of the puzzle, the piece that makes all the other pieces fit together. And suddenly, you can see a beautiful picture. And this is no ordinary baby. This is the child upon whom everything would depend on. This is the child who would one day. But wait, our story starts where all good stories start, right at the very beginning.
In the beginning, there was nothing. Nothing to hear, nothing to feel, nothing to see, only emptiness and darkness and nothing but nothing. But God was there, and God had a wonderful plan. God spoke, that's all. Whatever he said, it happened. God said, "Hello, light," and light shone into the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. "You're good," God said, and they were. Then God said, "Hello, sea, hello, sky," and a great space opened up, wide and deep and high. "You're good," God said, and they were. Then God said, "Hello, land," and there, splashing up through the oceans, came cliffs, mountains, and beaches. "You're good," God said, and they were. "Hello, trees, hello, grass and flowers," God said, and everything everywhere burst into life. "You're good," God said, and they were. "Hello, sun, hello, moon," and whizzing into the darkness came fiery globes, spinning around and around, whirling orange and purple and golden planets. "You're good," God said, and they were. "Hello, fish," God said, and with the darting and splashing, fish filled the sea. "Hello, birds," God said, and with the fluttering and flapping and singing, birds filled the sky. "You're good," God said, and they were. Then God said, "Hello, animals," and everyone came out to play. The earth was filled with noisy, growling, gobbling, snapping, and snorting. "You're good," God said, and they were. God saw all that he had made, and he loved them, and they were lovely because he loved them. But God saved the best for last. From the beginning, God had a shining dream on his heart. He would make people to share his forever happiness. They would be his children, and the world would be their perfect home. So God breathed life into Adam and Eve. When they opened their eyes, the first thing they ever saw was God's face. And when God saw them, he was like a new dad.
"You look like me. You're the most beautiful thing I've ever made."
God loved them with all his heart. and they were lovely because he loved them. God looked at everything he made. Perfect, he said, and it was. But all the stars and the mountains and oceans and galaxies and everything, nothing compared to how much God loved his children. He would move heaven and earth to be near them, always. Whatever happened, whatever it cost him, he would always love them. And so it was that wonderful love story began.
Adam and Eve lived happily together in their beautiful new home, and everything was perfect for a while, until the day when everything went wrong. God had a horrible enemy. His name was Satan. He was proud and evil and full of hate, and God had to send him out of heaven. Satan was seething with anger and looking for a way to stop God's plan, stop his love story right there. So he disguised himself as a snake and waited in the garden. Now God had given one rule.
Don't eat the fruit on that tree, because if you do, you'll think you'll know everything. You'll stop trusting me, and then death and sadness and tears will come.
And soon the snake saw his chance. He slithered up to Eve.
Does God really love you? If he does, why won't he let you eat the nice, juicy, delicious fruit? Poor you. Perhaps God doesn't want you to be happy.
The snake's words hissed into her ears, sunk deep into her heart like poison. Eve wondered. Suddenly, she didn't know anymore.
Just trust me. You don't need God. One small taste and you'll be happier than you could ever dream.
Eve picked up the fruit and ate some, and Adam ate some too. And a terrible lie came into the world. It would never leave. It would live on every human heart, whispering to every one of God's children, God doesn't love me. And it wasn't a dream, it was a nightmare. Something strange was happening. They had always been naked, but now they felt naked and wrong. Later that evening, as God was taking his walk, he usually called to them. Usually they loved to hear God's voice and would run to him, but this time they ran away and hid in the shadows.
Where are you? Did you eat the fruit I told you not to eat? What have you done?
And a terrible pain came into God's heart. His children hadn't just broken the one rule, they had broken God's heart. They had broken their wonderful relationship with him. You see, sin had come into God's perfect world, and it would never leave. God's children would always be running away from him and hiding in the dark. God couldn't let his children live forever, not in such pain, not without him. There was only one way to protect them.
You'll have to leave the garden now.
God told his children, his eyes filling up with tears, but before they left the garden, God made clothes for his children to cover them. He gently clothed them and sent them away on a long, long journey, out of the garden, out of their homes. Well, in another story, it would all be over and that would have been the end. But not in this story. God loved his children too much to let the story end there. Even though he knew he would suffer, God had a plan, a magnificent dream. One day he would get his children back. One day he would make the world their perfect home again. You see, no matter what, in spite of everything, God would love his children with a never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love. Before they left the garden, God whispered a promise to Adam and Eve.
It will not always be so. I will come to rescue you. And when I do, I'm going to do battle against the snake. I'll get rid of the sin and the darkness and the sadness you let in here. I'm coming back for you.
And one day, God would come.
Time passed and many people filled the earth. Everyone everywhere had forgotten God and were only doing bad things all the time. God's heart was filled with pain when they saw what had happened to the world he loved. Now Noah was God's friend, which was odd in those days because no one else was. Noah listened to God. He talked to God. He just loved being with God like you do with your best friend.
Noah, things have gone wrong. People have filled my world with hate instead of love. They are destroying themselves and each other in my world. I must stop them. First, I'll build an ark.
which is short for a very large boat. Noah didn't know how to build an ark, but God knew and he would show him.
A storm is coming, but I will rescue you. I promise. I'll send the animals to you.
So Noah built the ark. When the ark was ready, God said,
All aboard.
and Noah's family and all the animals climbed inside. Then God shut the door, and it started raining. And it rained and rained and rained. And the rain joined in the puddles, that joined into rivers, that joined into lakes, that joined into a flood that covered the whole world. But in the middle of the huge storm, and the crashing waves, and all the thunder and lightning, through it all, God was with them. And God kept them safe for 40 long days and 40 long nights. Finally, the rain stopped. The sun came out, and Noah threw open all the windows. Noah sent his dove out to explore, and she brought him back a fresh olive leaf. Everyone knew what that meant. She had found a tree and land. The water was going down. Eventually, the boat landed on top of a great mountain. As soon as it was safe, God said,
Now will you come?
and so they did. The first thing Noah did was to thank God for rescuing them, just as he had promised. And the first thing God did was make another promise.
I won't ever destroy the world with a flood again. See, I've hung my boat in the clouds.
And there in the clouds, just where the storm meets the sun, was a beautiful bow made of light. It was a new beginning in God's world. It wasn't long before everything went wrong again, but God wasn't surprised. He knew this would happen again. That's why, before the beginning of time, he had another plan, a better plan. A plan not to destroy the world, but rescue it. A plan to one day send his own son, the rescuer. God's strong anger against hate and sadness and death would come down once more, but not on his people or his world. No, God's war bow was not pointing down at his people. It was pointing up into the heart of heaven.
Years passed and things didn't get any better. People were still just as cruel and mean to one another. They still got sick and died. God's world was still full of tears. It was never meant to be like this. But God was getting ready to do something about it. He was going to make all the wrong things right. And he was going to do it through a family.
Abraham, how many stars are there?
God was about to tell his friend a wonderful secret. Abraham couldn't count them all.
993, 994, 997, no wait, 1, 2, 2.
Guess what? I will give you so many children and great grandchildren, you won't be able to count them.
How can I have a family? I don't have any children, let alone grandchildren. I'm 99 years old. I'm too old to start having babies. What do you mean?
Believe me.
And then God told Abraham about his secret rescue plan.
Abraham, I will make your family very big, till one day your family will come to a number more than all the stars in the sky. You'll be my special family, my people, and through you, everyone will be blessed.
It was an incredible promise. God was going to rescue the world through Abraham's family. One of his great-great-great-grandchildren would be the promised one, the rescuer. So Abraham trusted God, what God said, more than what his eyes could see, and he believed. Now when Abraham's wife, Sarah, heard God's promise, she just laughed to herself. But it wasn't a happy laugh. It had tears in it.
I've always wanted a baby. Can my dreams really come true? How can I have a baby when I'm 9 years old?
Sarah didn't believe God could do what he promised. She had forgotten that when God says something, it's as good as done. Sure enough, 9 months later, just as God had promised, Sarah gave birth to to a baby boy. They named him Isaac, which means son of laughter. God would do as he promised and would always look after Abraham's family, his special people. And one day, God would send another baby, a baby promised to a girl who didn't even have a husband. But this baby would be laughter to the whole world. This baby would be everyone's dream come true.
God knew that the secret rescue plan could only work if Abraham trusted him completely. God had to make sure Abraham would do whatever he asked. So a few years later, God asked Abraham to give him a present. Abraham liked giving presents to God. He gave God his animals. They were called sacrifices, and they were a way to say, I love you to God. But this time, God didn't want a lamb or a goat. God wanted Abraham to give him something more, much more. He wanted Abraham to give him his son, his only son, the son he loved, Isaac. Put his son on the altar and kill him as a sacrifice? How could God want him to do such a terrible thing? Abraham didn't understand, but he knew God was his father who loved him, and so Abraham trusted him. Early the next morning, Abraham and Isaac set off. They climbed a steep, stony trail up the mountain.
Papa, we had everything where we needed, so we got a lamb as a sacrifice. God will give us the lamb's son.
They built an altar and laid the wood on top. Abraham asked his son to climb on the wood, and because he trusted his father, he climbed up onto the altar, and Abraham tied his boy to the wood. Isaac didn't struggle or try to run away. He just lay there quietly. Everything was ready. Abraham took the knife. Tears were filling his eyes. Pain was filling his heart. He lifted the knife high into the air.
Stop! Don't hurt the boy. I want him to live and not die. I know that you love me because you would have given me your only son.
Suddenly, Abraham saw a ram caught in some brambles, the sacrifice. God had given them what they needed just in time. The ram would die so Isaac didn't have to. And so Abraham sacrificed the ram instead of his son. And as they sat there on the mountaintop, God helped Abraham and Isaac understand something. God wanted his people to live, not die. God wanted to rescue his people, not punish them. But they must trust him.
One day someone will be born into your family and he will bring happiness to the whole world.
God was getting ready to give the whole world a wonderful present. It would be God's way to tell his people, I love you. Many years later, another son would climb another hill, carrying wood on his back. Like Isaac, he would trust his father and do what his father asked. He wouldn't struggle or run away. Who was he? God's son, his only son, the son he loved, the Lamb of God.
Now, many years had passed. Abraham's family became a large nation. They had been held in slavery in Egypt for numerous years. God used Moses to rescue them. After Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, refused to let them leave, God sent 10 warnings called pledges. After each pledge, Pharaoh still didn't want to let them go. Finally, God sent the worst thing of all. The oldest boy in each family of Egypt would die. God told his people to take their best lamb, to kill it, and put some of its blood on their front doors. That night, it was just as God had said. All the firstborn sons, including Pharaoh's, died. Finally, Pharaoh did what God said and let the people leave. And so, Moses and God's people fled out of Egypt and out of slavery. They were free at last. God's people would remember this great rescue and call it Passover. But an even greater rescue was coming. God was going to do it again. He was going to come down once more to rescue his people. But this time, God was going to set them free forever and ever. So there they were, grannies and granddads, babies, uncles, aunts, children's moms and dads, out there in the middle of the desert. They were hungry and thirsty and much, much too hot. Now remember, because this is something they've forgotten, God had done amazing things for his people, but they weren't happy. They didn't care about being free. Wasn't it better when they were slaves? At least they had lots of nice food to eat.
God doesn't want us to be happy.
It was the same lie that Adam and Eve had heard all those years before.
God brought us out because God doesn't love us.
But they didn't know God very well, did they? Every day of their journey, God kept on showing his people how well he would look after them if they would trust and obey him. He fed them when they were hungry. He made water flow from a rock when they were thirsty. And still, God's children just didn't trust him or do what he asked. Then they thought of a better job of looking after themselves and making themselves happy. But God didn't. But God knew there was no such thing as happiness without him. So God led them to a tall mountain. God wanted to talk to his people and show them what he was like. He wanted to help them know him better and tell them about the special land as he was going to give them.
The whole earth belongs to me, but I have chosen you. You are my special family. I want you to live in a way that shows everyone else what I'm like, so they can know me too.
God called Moses up to the mountain and gave Moses 10 rules, called commandments.
I want you to love me more than anything else in the whole world. I know that I love you too. That's the most important thing of all.
God gave them other rules, like don't make yourself protecting God's, don't kill people or steal or lie. The other rules show God's people how to live and how to be close to him and how to be happy. They showed how life worked best. But they couldn't keep all these rules. No matter how hard they tried, they could never keep God's rules all the time. God knew they couldn't. He wanted them to know it too. Only one person could keep all the rules. And many years later, God would send him to stand in their place and be perfect for them, because the rules couldn't save them. Only God could save them.
Many more years passed. God's people would say that they would follow God and then would fall away and go their own way. And every time things would go bad for them. Then God would send someone that would tell them what they needed to do, to turn back to God and follow him. The people would be sorry for not trusting God and turn back to him. God would forgive them, and when things were going good for them, they would again forget about God, and the cycle of misery would start all over again. One time, after they came back home after being slaves again, one of God's messengers, called a prophet named Ezra, was reading the rules God had given Moses. An odd thing happened. The more he read, the sadder they all got. As Ezra read the book of rules, it worked like a mirror. It showed them what they were like, and they didn't like what they saw. They saw that they had not been living the way they should. They saw that they were cruel and selfish. They thought they knew what God was going to do, but they didn't. They thought God was going to punish them. Ezra looked at God's children. Great hot tears were welling up in their eyes and streaming down their cheeks. He stopped reading mid-sentence and shut the book.
God wants us to be happy. We're going to have a party.
And so they did all week long. All day they listened to stories about the wonderful things God had done for his people. They remembered how God had always, all through the years, had been loving his children, keeping his promise to Abraham, taking care of them, forgiving them, even when they disobeyed, even when they ran away from him. Then God told his children something more.
I am going to send my messenger, the promised one, the one you have been waiting for, the one to rescue you. He is coming, so get ready.
It had taken centuries for God's people to be ready, but now the time had almost come for the best part of God's plan. God himself was going to come, not to punish his people, but to rescue them. God was getting ready to wipe away every tear from every eye, and the true party was about to begin.
If you would stand with me, and we're going to sing a song together here. From heaven you came down, you left your throne. recognize your cry as worship filled the night. Son of God has come. Oh, now here with us. Glory to God in the highest. Peace to the weary world. And blessed is he who has come to save us, God in flesh and blood. Your hands and feet were bound, thorns became your crown. The love that molded us was nailed upon the cross, and every drop of grace was spilled out on that day. You were lifted high, oh God the crucified. Glory to God in the highest. Peace to the weary world. And blessed is he who has come to save us, God in flesh and blood. Resurrection life. You gave up your spirit to give it to your bride. Resurrection life. You gave up your spirit to come and live inside us. Resurrection life. You gave up your spirit to give it to your bride. Resurrection life. You gave up your spirit to come and live inside us. Glory to God in the highest. Peace to the weary world. And blessed is he who has come to save us, God in flesh and blood. And glory to God in the highest. Peace to the weary world. And blessed is he who has come to save us, God in flesh and blood. Oh, God in flesh and blood. God in flesh and blood. Amen. You may be seated.
Everything was ready. The moment God had been waiting for was here at last. God was coming to help his people, just as he had promised in the beginning. But how would he come? What would he be like? What would he do? Mountains would have bowed, seas would have roared, trees would have clapped their hands. But the earth held its breath. As silent as snow falling, he came in. And no one was looking. In the darkness, he came. There was a young girl who was engaged to a man named Joseph. One morning, this girl was minding her own business when suddenly an angel appeared right there in her bedroom. He was Gabriel, and he was a special messenger from heaven. When she saw him, Mary was frightened.
You don't have to be scared. God is very happy with you.
Mary looked around to see if perhaps she was talking to someone else.
Mary, you're going to have a baby, a little boy. You will call him Jesus. He is God's own son. He's the one. He's the rescuer.
Wait, God was sending a baby to rescue the world?
But it's too wonderful. That is too wonderful for God.
So Mary trusted God more than what her eyes could see, and she believed.
I am God's servant. Whatever God says, I will do.
Sure enough, it was just as the angel had said. 9 months later, Mary was almost ready to have her baby. Now, Mary and Joseph had to take a trip to Bethlehem. But when they reached the little town, they found that every room was full, every bed was taken. They couldn't find anywhere except an old, tumble-down stable. So they stayed where the cows and the donkeys and the horses stayed. And there, in the stable, among the chickens and the donkeys and the cows, in the quiet of the night, God gave the world his wonderful gift. The baby that would change the world was born, his baby son. Mary and Joseph wrapped him to keep him warm. They made a soft bed of straw and used the animal's feeding trough as his cradle. They gazed in wonder at God's great gift, wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. Mary and Joseph named him Jesus, Emmanuel, which means God has come to live with us. Because, of course, he had.
That same night, in amongst the other stars, suddenly a bright new star appeared. Of all the stars in the dark heavens, this one shone clear. It blazed in the night and made other stars look pale beside it. God put it there when his baby son was born, to be like a spotlight shining on him, lighting up the darkness, showing people the way to him. You see, God was like a new daddy. He couldn't keep the good news to himself. He'd been waiting all these long years for this moment, and now he wanted to tell everyone. So he pulled out all the stops. He sent an angel to tell Mary the good news. He put a special star in the sky to show where his boy was. And now he was going to send a big choir of angels to sing his happy song to the world. He's here. He's come. Go and see him, my little boy. Now, where would you send your splendid choir? To a big concert hall, maybe, or a palace, perhaps? God sent his to a little hillside outside a little town in the middle of the night. He sent all those angels to sing for a raggedy old bunch of shepherds watching their sheep outside of Bethlehem. God must have thought the shepherds were very important because they're the ones he chose to tell the good news to first. That night, some shepherds were out in the open field, warming themselves by the campfire, when suddenly the sheep were frightened by something. What was that? A winged bee? They turned around. Standing in front of them was an angel, blazing in the darkness.
Don't be afraid of me. I have entrusted you. I heard the great you have news for everyone, everywhere. Today, Bethlehem, God's son has been born. You can go and see him. He's sleeping in a manger.
Behind the angel, they saw a strange glowing cloud, except it wasn't a cloud. It was angels, troops and troops of angels, armed with light, and they were singing a beautiful song.
Sweetly singing o'er the plains and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Gloria in excelsis Deo.
Then, as quickly as they appeared, the angels left. The shepherds stamped out their fire, left their sheep, raced down the hill, through the city gates, down the narrow cobble streets, through a courtyard, down through steps, until, at last, they reached a tumble-down stable. They caught their breath, then quickly they tiptoed inside. They knelt on the dirt floor. They had heard about the promised child, and now he was here. Heaven's son, the maker of the stars, a baby sleeping in his mother's arms. This baby would be like the bright stars shining in the sky that night, a light to light up the whole world, chasing away darkness, helping people see. And the darker the night got, the brighter the star would shine.
So you see, God kept his promise to send a rescuer. God's treasure is in his children. It is why Jesus had come into the world, to find God's treasure and pay the price to win them back, even if it cost him everything. Jesus' story doesn't end with him becoming a baby. He grew up and did many wonderful things. He healed people and taught them how to love God. He asked 12 men to be his helpers. He eventually would die on the cross. The full force of the storm of God's anger at sin would come down, his own son instead of his people. It was the only way God would destroy sin, and not destroy his children whose hearts were filled with sin. Jesus took it all and paid the price, not destroying his children whose hearts only that, but he was also raised to life again. Now everyone can come home to God. Death is not the end. You can live forever with your Father in heaven. Jesus rescued the whole world. After Jesus was taken back into heaven, his helper went everywhere telling about Jesus. John was one of Jesus' helpers. He was old now and living on an island, which might sound nice, except it was jail. One morning, Jesus appeared right there in John's cell.
John, I'm going to tell you a secret about when I come back. Write down what you see, so God's children can read it and wait with happy excitement.
Then Jesus gave John a beautiful dream, except John was wide awake and he saw was real, and one day it would all come true. It was hard to squeeze all John saw into words and fit it on a page, and all the words in all the pages of the books and all the world would never be enough.
I am the beginning and the ending.
One day, John knew heaven would come down and mend God's broken world and make it our true perfect home once again. And he knew then that the ending of the story was going to be so great, it would make all the sadness and tears and everything seem just like a shadow that is chased away by the morning sun.
I am on my way. I'll be there soon.
John came to the end of his book, but he didn't write the end, because, of course, that's how stories finish. This one's not yet over. So instead, he wrote,
Come quickly, Jesus.
which is perhaps just another way of saying to be continued.
For anyone who says yes to Jesus, for anyone who believes what Jesus said, for anyone who will just reach out to take it, then God will give them this wonderful gift. To be born into a whole new life, to be who they really are, who God always made them to be, their own true selves, God's dear child. Because you see, the most wonderful thing about the story is it's your story too.
All right, thank you, kids. You guys did an excellent job. I appreciate it. Yeah, as we close, it is our hope and our prayer that you have come to understand the story of God's love for you, and why He created you, and inviting you in to come home to God. As I said, when the fullness of time came, He sent forth His Son, that He might redeem us and that we might become adopted as His sons. And if you do not know Jesus as your Redeemer and have trusted Him as your Savior and experienced that adoption into His family, please talk with myself or one of our elders or some of those who've led music or something, and we would be glad to help you understand that story and God's gift, His invitation to you, which is the best gift of Christmas ever. Dear Lord, we thank you. We praise you that you came to be our Redeemer, to deal with our brokenness and our sin, and to make a way that we can come back into a fullness of a relationship with God, our sin, our guilt, our shame having been taken care of by your Son. And Lord, as we celebrate this Christmas, again, may we rejoice. May we rejoice that you have come to save us from our sin and to set us free, Lord, that you came to invite us back in and to walk with you. And so, Lord, may we do that this Christmas in a new, in a fresh way. Thank you once again. In your name we pray. Amen. As we close, we do want to invite each of you to stay for a time of fellowship. We have some refreshments there in the back that you can help yourself to, and just to encourage the kids and encourage one another as we continue celebrating this Christmas season. Thank you again for joining us.